am speaking today on how to make book publishing as easy as 1, 2, 3. But considering today we're talking about book publishing, do people mind if I start with a little story? Fantastic. It was the 22nd of November 1983. It was late at night and a woman had been in labour for 22 hours. At 11 past 11, the baby began to come. There was complications, several complications. So many complications that immediately another 22 people were rushed into the room to study this unique birth. They had been waiting to write a thesis on a particular situation that had only for the first time occurred in Australia. And on that night, when that baby was born, she authored her first book. The youngest author ever in history to go down in the pages of a book as a co-contributor as Baby X at age 1 day. That child grew up, and at age 2, after hearing her nana talk about a fishing trip she went on, she decided she was going to write a book. It was going to be called Nana Went Fishing. And at 2, she was determined to write a book. Now at 2 years old, this child couldn't read, this child couldn't write, but she wanted to write a book. So she did. It was a very tedious process for the nana. Nana, how do you spell Nana? N-A-N-A. Nana, what does an N look like? Needless to say, at the end of the day, that child had written a book. It was short, it took forever, but it had a beginning, a middle and a conclusion. It was a book. Incidentally, that child's first sentence was, "I want money." Now, it wasn't because the child was from a particularly poor background or because the child was particularly greedy, but it was because the child's favourite game was playing shop. She liked to sell people items she thought they needed. For example, a packet of cornflakes that had already been used and resealed because it was better for you on the calories. She was always looking out for other people's best interests. But at age 2, she hadn't yet worked out that you could make money from writing a book. Well, that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So let's get into it. I had a PowerPoint presentation to bring you guys today, and I recently found out that there's no PowerPoint facilities, so you will each have a handout on your chairs. If you want to follow along with me, feel free to. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, feel free to come and see me afterwards. But basically, I said book publishing is as easy as 1, 2, 3, so we're going to go through those 3 steps today. The first is learn. You cannot publish a book if you don't know how to. It is very difficult, it is very time consuming, it will cost you a lot of money, and you probably won't do a good job of it. So the first things you need to know if you're learning how to publish a book is what is involved. Well, as you've already heard, there's 7 steps in the publishing process: writing, editing, illustrating, design, registration, production, and distribution. It doesn't matter which of those steps you're doing yourself or which of those steps someone else is doing. If you don't know and understand each of those steps, someone might make a mistake on your book and get you the outcome you didn't want without your knowledge because you didn't know what you didn't know. It is very important to learn before you start. So can I have a show of hands here today? Who's here because they want to write a book? Okay, a lot of you. Who's here because they want to illustrate a book? Not so many of you. Every book needs illustrations, not just a children's book. Plain text on a page is very, very boring. You want illustrations. Do you want your book to stand out? Illustrations might be a chart or a diagram. They might be a graphical element. They might be photographs. But you want something other than plain text in your book. So if you haven't considered now who's doing illustrations for your book, it's something you want to think about. Likewise, editing. You don't want a book going out there that doesn't have correct grammar, correct spelling. It'll take away all credibility. It'll stop potential sales. Even if you're doing a book because it's a dream, you really want to get a book out there, your book needs to be correctly edited. Think about the design. Who's putting your book together? Who's going to make it look great? Who's taking care of that for you? What about registration? You don't want to release a book and find out it's illegal. You want to make sure your book is correctly registered to be sold in the country you're selling it in. Production. Where do you want to produce your book? What do you know about production? Did you know it's half price to do it offshore? Or are you going to pay the Australian prices to do it here? You don't know what you don't know until you research these areas. Likewise, distribution. Are you looking at self-distribution? Are you looking at online distribution? Are you looking at bookstore distribution? You need to learn about each of these areas. The second thing in the learning process is the format of your book. Once you know about each area, what format do you want to do your book in? Is it a printed book? Is it an e-book, so it's going online, it's got no production costs for you, but it's not going to be available to someone that doesn't have a computer to download it? Is it an audio book? Are people too busy to listen to what your book's on? Is it something that would be better for them to be playing on their car on the way to work or on the train when they're commuting? What format works best for your book? What about the e-audio? If they're downloading an electronic book, why not an electronic sound file that they can put straight onto their MP3 player and listen to? Do they need the physical CD? You need to work out what's right for you and your target market. Now, the fifth thing I have on this list today is actually a very new format, and that's called a book. Can I have a show of hands who's actually heard of a book? Fantastic, 2 people in the room, excellent. They only came out this month, so it's a very, very new invention. But a book, as it sounds, is a V-book or a video book. It's a book where it's not only a physical book, though an online version, it's not only an audio book in that there's sound in it, but it's a video book. There will be clips of video happening in your book. Doesn't mean the whole thing's filmed, but if you're doing a presentation, for example, like I'm doing here today, and that happened to be on the same topic as what your book was on, and that was relevant to, say, an introductory chapter, that video clip could be playing live in line on your book. There is so many formats to think about and what's right for your target market, and you want to make sure you've got that format right before you even start writing. The third thing I want to draw your attention to in the learning stage is why you're actually doing a book in the first place. Is it to fulfill a dream? Show of hands, who really wants to write a book because they just want to write a book? Not so many of you, which means there's an alternative motive there. Is it you want to make money from a book? Show of hands on that one. Yeah, everyone loves that one. Well, I'm here to tell you today that even though that 2-year-old didn't know how to do it, I do, and it's very easy to make money from a book if you do it in the correct manner. It is very easy to lose money from a book if you do it in the incorrect manner. And that is the importance of knowing what you want to do before you start.